speakers to tell you how to start this company in Sweden? Would that be a guy from Energimyndigheten and a guy from Semco and then a guy from Vinge? Would that really do the trick for you? No. And this is done over and over and over again for the last 30 years. So here you have someone that we think really knows this, put this together. And of course they put the most important people because, you know, that's what we think. This is the most important thing I need to know. This is a major reason why we have this thinking in Sweden. Because this has gone on for 30 years. And we have to change them. Here's some other things. Very quickly. We're going to also US booked a booth at the trade show, and we put in all our efforts of making this booth fantastic, and we go over there and voila, here we are from Sweden, we are fantastic. Ton of Americans comes by, you know, and they look at you and they say, oh, you are fantastic. Well, for you who are Americans, you know that that's how we greet people in the United States, right? We are very polite and we always think you're fantastic, great, fantastic product. Doesn't mean that you have a business at all. And Americans that goes to a trade show, they have a calendar of meetings. Half of their days are already booked up with potential distributors, partners, whoever they see that I need to talk to them about business. Swedes never do that. It's total waste to go to a trade show if you don't have that calendar half full before you get there. You have to start 4 months ahead. Pinpoint, who is it I want to talk to? Who do I want to meet? Who's going to make this happen for me in the US? And book meetings with them. If it's made a trade show, they are there. This is another classic one. Talk to companies and they say, no, US is covered, we have a distributor there. No, it's like, okay, Europe is covered, I have a distributor in Greece. Will we say that here? No. So why do we say that about the United States? Who the hell came up with this? That it's one distributor is fine for the United States? No, not at all. 20, 30, depending on what your product is, what your service is. But this is sort of a big problem, big problem. And then we have the whole assumption. I've seen a lot of TV and therefore I know how US works. And I think this is also the biggest problem that we have is that Americans look like us here in Sweden, and we Swedes speak English, we understand them, and we think we sort of have this down. We know how Americans are, and we don't. There is as much difference to do business in the United States as for a Swede to go to China. But when a Swede goes to China, he takes in so much advice, and he takes in local Chinese people and everything to help him. When they go to the United States, not at all, because they know this. And the problem is when they meet people like us and they even retain us and pay us a lot of money. And we tell them things. They still don't listen. Classic case is a company we had, and it was sort of this distributed thing, and we said, you know, this is how we have to execute this plan, and we need to get up to 20 distributors within the first year to make this really happen and go. And they said, no, absolutely not. 3 or 4, that's all that's needed. No, you need 20. You guys don't understand this. You need to get out there now. And it took a whole year of them sort of going through this, and they realized after being out and meeting and sort of that after about a year the CEO from Sweden came back and said, okay, now I get it, so let's go for it. Now we need to go to 20. So a whole year of sort of struggling around in the US market, but at least they realized. Most companies in Sweden don't realize. They sort of see this struggling around and say, okay, this doesn't really work, let's pull out. And then we already talked about lawyers and all that stuff, but the thing is we have, you know, there's an interesting thing that's called liability insurance. If you're a Swedish company, go to your Swedish insurance company and ask for a product liability insurance in the United States, they're going to quote you a price that is astronomical. If you happen to have a British company here in Sweden, there are a few that operates that are your insurance company, they will actually quote you a fair price. If you start a subsidiary in the United States and you use that subsidiary to distribute the product into the market and you take the liability insurance there, it's going to be even lower. It's not enormously expensive. It's actually fairly fair pricing on liability insurance for most products, barring some medical device stuff. So there are processes to quickly handle all these issues. And then, of course, we all know that we should be in Delaware, right? We should incorporate in Delaware. I don't know why that has been the big thing here in Sweden, but well, it's sort of, I know why in the US a lot of companies are in Delaware, because they have a different law with regards to corporations. And one of the major things is that their law gives much more power to the management who run the company than to the shareholders who owns it. One of the things. But for a Swedish company who opens up a subsidiary, it doesn't matter, right? And then they, on the tax side and fees and so on, it sort of balances itself out with a lot of other states. You should establish the company where you have your customers. Wherever you have your first customers, wherever you feel that it makes more sense to be, because here I can, within 1 hour driving distance, I can get 5 customers, quickly get going. That's where you incorporate. Forget Delaware. That can be 5 years later on when you're going to go public in the United States, then you need to list on NASDAQ. Then maybe you want to go to Delaware because that means the US, the owner can retain much more power as management than having to relinquish some of that to the shareholders. This is another thing. I'm going to grow within the European Union, and then the United States comes in a few years. Forget it, you're going to lose out. Go so quickly now. And one funny thing is that if you go into the US and American magazines in your specific area, because in the US there is, we work with a company, Hearing Aids. You know how many magazines there are in the US who are actually specifically writing about hearing aids? 9 monthly magazines. Yes, hearing aids. So, but what's so interesting is that the leading magazines in all these different areas, they are read by all the Europeans. If you try to promote your product in France and try to get into a French paper and get written about it, no. But if you get into the US leading monthly magazine about this or on their website, a lot of French people in that business will read it. So it's actually a way to get your message into Europe. And you will also be in a very competitive environment which will help you sharpen your tools very quickly, and you will be able to compete much more effectively if you get into the US market very quickly. This is a free advice that I'm going to give you. It's worth about $20,000, $50,000. When you start a company in Sweden and you have global aspiration, or when you come up with your product name for your product and you have global aspiration, check the trademark register in the United States and also in Europe. This happens frequently. We have companies come to us, we're going to help them in, and the first thing we do is we go and check the trademark register and we say, your name is already taken in the US. And then they already spent a ton of money on branding this here in Europe. They have everything printed, done, and whatever, and now they can use anything of that in the US. The goodwill that is with their name is useless, everything. And do a trade, you can go online and check, and then if you want to be more sophisticated, you check sort of through a lot of different databases in the US. Because our laws in the US is that first uses rules, meaning that it's not that you have registered a trademark, that is just more like a flag that you really say, this is mine. But how the laws are in the US is when the first time you use a name, if you are the first, it's yours, regardless if you registered or not. If someone registers 4 years later, you can just go in and say, hey, 4 years ago I sent a sales letter from Florida to Georgia promoting my product, and here's the letter, and here's, we've been doing ads since then. They will not get the trademark, it's yours. So, you need to search there's a lot of other registers. So there are services in the US who does that, but this is sort of, you spend $700, $1,000, and it saves you maybe $50,000 2 years later when you get into the US market. This is interesting. A lot of Swedish companies says that we don't have any competitors.